Hi Arrows, I'm Kashawn and you are watching The Book Archer. Yesterday I posted a video which I will leave linked in the cards above where I talked about all of the book series that I was currently reading and actively trying to finish. Today I'm going to be talking about the series that I am DNFing, or series that I will not be continuing on with, and giving you my reasons on why I won't be continuing them, etc, etc. So let's go. The first series is a series that I loved and enjoyed in its original form, and that is the Shatter Me trilogy by Mafi. I have talked about this trilogy for years and years on my channel, and that includes the book Shatter Me, Unravel Me, and Ignite Me. Now, a couple years ago, Mafi had announced that she was extending the series, which I was excited about because a lot of the things in book 3 were a little bit open-ended, even though it was a very satisfying series conclusion. And I did pick up the 4th and the 5th book in the second half of the trilogy. However, after reading book 4 and 5, I just decided that I'm not even going to bother with the 6th one. And as far as I'm concerned, this series is completed and I have read the entire trilogy. This is the original story arc. I just don't feel like the second half of the trilogy was, not only did it feel unnecessary, I feel like it unraveled the character arcs that you get in the first 3 books, so it wasn't even enjoyable. Like, some stuff is just enjoyable because you get to be back in that world, but there were just so many different changes and things that happened. So yeah, I won't be continuing on. I don't care if I only have 1 book. If you want to see I unhauled books 4 and 5, I'll leave a link to the unhaul I did earlier this year. The next series that I have decided to not continue is going to be, shocker to some of you guys, and that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I was one of the people that read this first book and really enjoyed it. I didn't give it 5 stars, but I think it was a solid 4-star read for me. The number 1 star takeaway was a lot of the character development and the decisions that the characters were making. If you've read book 2, that was one of the main issues. Book 2 came out, I think, December of last year. I picked up the audio in January or February, and y'all, I could not get through it. Like, I DNF'd it. I DNF'd it very, very early on in the story. I wish that everything tied up at the end, because this would have been a good standalone, because book 2 really just came and decimated everything I liked about book 1. The character arcs, the characters were acting completely outside of themselves. I didn't like the way the plot was going. I wasn't having as good of a time because a lot of the fun elements that were in book 1 were also missing in book 2. Maybe it'll redeem itself later on in the series. Somebody's gonna have to tell me, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm not finishing it. The next one is one that I recently read a couple months ago, The Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is a new adult fantasy story set at a magic school where they have to fight these monsters in order to get out of the school. So that is basically, when I read it, the entire plot. I think that I was just expecting a lot more from the story. While I was reading this, I was getting bored. There would randomly be info dumping in the middle of an action scene, and it would take me out of the action sequence, and I'd just be like, girl, why are we talking about this right now? Can you get back to the story at hand? Once I finish this, I just already don't feel compelled to pick up the next book, and I just read this a month or so ago, so I know once book 2 comes out next year, I'm not even going to be thinking about it. Now, do I think this was a bad book? No. Do I think that some people will enjoy this? Yes, some people will, but this was just very middle of the road mediocre for me. And plus, I was taking a chance on an author that I had never read from before, that I had heard good things about. So this just didn't pan out for me, and I won't be continuing on with the series. The next one is a trilogy that I read the first 2 books in, and that is The Kiss of Deception. So this is the first book in the Remnant Chronicles. Book 2 is The Heart of Betrayal. Now, I actually really enjoyed both of these books. This follows a main character who's a princess, and she runs away. I think she's supposed to be betrothed and she doesn't want to get married, and she runs into 2 people while she's on the run, and she doesn't know that one of them is supposed to be the person that she's betrothed to, and the other person is an assassin that's sent to kill her. But as the reader, we don't know who is who either in book 1. So obviously at the end of the story, book 1, we find out who's who. I didn't have the issue where you get to the second book and the plot that progresses is not as interesting. I still enjoyed book 2. I think it had a lot of good political intrigue. Got to see the main character in a different setting, and it definitely expanded upon on the world. The main thing with this that put me off is like the last book probably about both of these books combined. Normally I don't have a problem with reading long books. However, I don't feel compelled and I don't feel the desire to go ahead and finish up the trilogy. I'm not really aching and wondering how it ended, so I probably will not be picking up the last one and I'll just keep it moving. The next few books, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be not finishing the series, but I'm also like 10% if somebody convinced me that I might continue to give them a go. First one I want to talk about is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I really enjoyed this first book, Stalking Jack the Ripper. It gave me all the historical vibes. I just love books set during this time period that have mysteries and things like that. However, book 2, I don't even remember if I ever finished it. I remember listening to it on audio and I know I was at least halfway through, but I don't think I ever finished it. And there are 4 books in this series and I heard that they progressively like get worse. I don't know if I want to invest the time in continuing on with them. If you've read these books, is this one that you would continue reading the entire series from? Next one that I want to mention is Walk on Earth, a Stranger by Ray Carson. This is a book that I read and really enjoyed. That historical fiction, the gold rush during when America was in the time period where everybody was going out west. I find the western setting to be something that I very much enjoy, or at least the journey aspect of it. What I have found though is that once the character gets to the point where they're trying to explore California or whatever like that, I lose interest. That is why I'm not sure if I want to complete this trilogy. I don't know if books 2 or 3 will have the same interesting elements that I really loved about this one. I've also heard that Ray Carson is really good at completing series. I read this years ago and I have not been compelled to pick up the second and third book. As far as I'm concerned, this can read as a standalone as well. The next 2 are books that I do not own. The first one being The Raven Cycle. I listened to the first book, The Raven Boys, on audio. Everybody loves this series. They rave about it. They reread it. They talk about how unique and amazing it is. And reading the first book, I definitely can see that. It is so atmospheric and it doesn't remind me of anything else that I've ever read. Maggie Steve Otter really has a very unique writing style. I actually would have even preferred to read the physical copy. The audiobook is phenomenal, but the creep factor was just a little bit too high for me and I'm a scaredy cat, even though these books are really not that creepy. However, the story is so unique to the point where the unique elements of it are not necessarily things that interest me personally to read a 4-book series on, which is why I haven't felt compelled to continue it. That is another one that I'm just like, I don't need to continue it. This last book is one that I am really undecided on if I want to continue or not. That is Shadow Shaper by Daniel Jose Older. I know that the last book in this series just recently came out. Now this is a book that I enjoyed for the most part when I was reading it. However, I feel like in this first book, the writing was a little bit underdeveloped. I kind of wanted a little bit more depth to this urban fantasy story. I think that it has such a unique and cool magical system. And on top of that, this audiobook is narrated by Anika Nani Rose. Those are elements that make me want to continue. However, I wasn't like super compelled once I finished this story to dive back into the world. And I want to know if any of y'all have read this series or read more than just the first book in this series. Is this one that y'all would consider continuing? Because I really am undecided. I don't know what to do. The other ones I'm pretty solid on, but this one I'm very much 50-50 on whether I should keep going or not. Those are all of the series that I will be DNFing, or the series that I will not be continuing. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at theBookArcher, and I will see y'all in another video very soon. Bye!